Hi everybody, it's Honest John again. Now, when I was a kid, there were very few women drivers. I was born in 1949, and so in the 50s, hardly any women drove. And conventional wisdom was that the women who were driving were very bad drivers. But as I went through high school and college, the feminist movement started. Women burned their bras and began to take jobs in fields that had been exclusively the domain of men. They started their own businesses. They became construction workers, and doctors instead of nurses, and coal miners. And they worked in factories. And they learned how to drive. And so they didn't have to depend on men to get to where they needed to go. Now it's not unusual to see a woman driving. They even drive trucks and taxis and buses and work for Uber. And we no longer shake our fist and curse out women drivers. They're just somebody else who's on the road. And we no longer think about how important a step it was in the liberation of women, but it lessened their dependency on men. And that's why in many Muslim countries, women are forbidden to drive. But there was another thing that happened that was even more important in the liberation of women. The invention of the birth control pill and other birth control devices. And this was very controversial stuff. It wasn't until 1965 that the Supreme Court ruled that married couples had a right to birth control. And it wasn't until 7 years later, in 1972, that the court ruled that birth control was the right of unmarried people too. And a year later, in 1973, came the Roe versus Wade decision, which made abortion legal. So women have only had the right to control their vaginas for less than 50 years. But despite the fact that abortion is legal, it's very hard to get done in the red states. You have to jump through a lot of hoops, and there aren't very many clinics. It's perfectly legal, but it's easier for a criminal to get a gun in the red states than it is for a woman to have an abortion. And it's not just abortion. Republicans want to make it really, really hard to get birth control pills in their states too. Now, let's not pretend that conservatives have any particular love for children or any particular love for babies. The object of this is to control. If you can take away a woman's right to control reproduction, you can subjugate her. You can keep her down. Unplanned pregnancies and births are the #1 factor in poverty among women and children here in America. If you can get a woman pregnant before she is ready for it, you can prevent her from getting a higher education, limit her career choices, and force her to depend on either a man or the government for her very existence. And of course, the irony is that these conservatives, as much as they hate Muslims, think just like the Taliban. Because what they want is to get women out of the workplace, out of their cars, and back in the kitchen, where they think they belong. Thanks for listening.